Hello and welcome to Games from Folktales, a podcast that mixes historical research and tabletop role-playing settings. I'm your host, Timothy Ferguson, for a quick episode to fill out the last few minutes of my podcasting plan for the month. Jaynes' Bicameral Mind in Mythic Europe. So fans of Westworld can skip the next 15 seconds, but when discussing philosophy in Mythic Europe, I need to lay out the ground. In 1976, Jaynes published a book called The Origins of Consciousness in the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind. It was popular in the science fiction community. The core premise is that before approximately 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, humans did not have consciousness. Let's pause here to note that consciousness means something different than the general use of the term. He means metacognition. According to Jaynes, before coming to modern consciousness, people could not think about thinking. They could not consider their own minds or define how they learned things. Instead of having consciousness, people had, according to Jaynes, a second way of processing information. One lobe of the brain did the sort of thing modern consciousness now does, but it communicated with the rest of the brain, the part that has the executive behaviours, through auditory hallucinations. This, according to Jaynes, is why in books like the Iliad, characters never seem to decide anything for themselves. Whenever a piece of tension emerges, a god pops up and tells the person what to do. The Odyssey was written a little bit later, and he has more personal volition. But even then, there are a lot of gods about. The style of writing also turns up in the Bible. Pharaoh decides not to let the Jews go because God hardens his heart. I won't belabour Jaynes' point. It has problems in the real world. As an Australian, I'd note that our Aboriginal cultures just wreck his theory because they didn't do city building, but they still have consciousness. In Mythic Europe, though, fairies are not conscious in the human sense. Can we model at least some of them with bicameralism? Incognizant fairies are guided by their role, which they cannot think about directly because they don't know it exists. It nonetheless guides their actions. There isn't the element of hallucination found in Jaynes' work, but there is the division between the part of the mind that decides and the part of the mind that executes the decisions. The gods in your head driving a story thing seems to match a few types of incorporeal fairy, but they could also be the little angels and devils sitting on your character's metaphorical shoulders.